Before I do roll call, I wanted to do a quick some housekeeping rules of communication. We do have deaf individuals who are now part of the task force as members. So we ask that we make the meetings accessible for everybody here. Please make sure before you speak, you identify yourself every time. That helps individuals who are utilizing interpreters to be speaking. It is really nice that people can turn on their cameras when you are speaking. I know that may not be possible for everybody, but having a camera on, for those who are not able to hear people's voices, it's nice for them to be able to see somebody's face.
And Holly, this is your audio is really faint. I don't know, maybe the Zoom's using the wrong microphone for you.
Is that better?
That is much better, thank you.
All right, apologies. I was using the wrong microphone. Okay. Again, if you are speaking, this is Holly, please identify yourself before you start speaking. If you are able to turn on your camera when you speak, that helps those who are not able to hear voices identify who is speaking. And with that, I will do roll call. All right, this is Holly, and with roll call, we have representation from CCI, Steve, Tina, or Marie.
Tina's here.
Representation from CML, Megan.
Megan McKillop is here.
Representation from Accessibility Community, Cheryl Garcia. Representation from members at large, either Luke Adams or Billy Allen. Right.
Hello, this is Wes Horn. I'm dialing in. I am not online, but I am listening in.
Thanks, Wes. This is Holly. We're just about to get to you. We just started doing roll call.
Oh, sorry, I missed the first part.
Representing the BESP, Tim Kunkelman.
Good morning, everybody. I am here.
Also representing BESP from Intrado, Mary Jane.
Yes, I'm here, Holly. Thank you.
Thank you. Representing the ILAC from Lumen, Wes.
Here.
Representing the ILAC NNTC, Darla.
I'm here.
Representing wireless. So previously at our last meeting, we did vote and we did not have a wireless representation. I do believe since then that somebody else from Verizon had expressed interest in this position. Is anybody from Verizon who had wanted to possibly take the wireless position on the call?
Holly, this is Jenny Santana. I'm not from Verizon. I'm from T-Mobile. And Patrick Fusek from T-Mobile was previously on the task force, and I have since taken over Colorado from a legislative perspective. So he asked that if I can step in his role.
This is Holly, and I apologize. I meant T-Mobile. I didn't mean Verizon.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. It was Patrick who was previously part of the committee. So I'll turn to Scott or Daryl, will we need to take a vote for bringing in a new representation from T-Mobile since we didn't vote them in last time?
This is Daryl. Did Patrick leave while he was still in good standing, or was his position vacant due to absences? Do you remember?
So this is Holly. Let me look real quick. So Patrick was still in good standing as of 2021.
In that case, the organization that he was representing, which was T-Mobile, still holds the position, so they can replace the person who's representing them without a vote. That's based on the bylaws.
Okay, this is Holly. In that case, I will add T-Mobile into this.
But let me ask Scott, do you concur with that?
This is Scott, and thanks, Daryl. I do agree also.
And this is Holly. Jenny, you will be taking over that position.
Yes, that's right. Thank
Great.
you. Last name Santana.
This is Holly. And Jenny, after the call, I'll make sure that you are like in our listserv so that you're getting all the invites and all of the task force information. I can't recall if I've already done that or not.
I think you have, Holly, but appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, great. This is Holly. All right, representing Wireless Viero, Monica.
Yes, I'm here.
Representing CLEC or VoIP, Ray or Lindsay from IntelliQuint.
Yep, this is Ray Paddock. I'm on. Thank you.
Also representing the CLEX or VoIP, Jay or Erica from Bandwidth. Okay, hearing nobody from Bandwidth. Now on to 911 representation, Jody from Gunnison.
I'm here. Thank you.
Danette from Morgan County.
This is Danette. I'm here.
Jennifer or Jeremy from Grand Junction.
This is Jennifer. I'm here.
Kimberly from Larimer or an alternate.
This is
Val or
Kim-
Tracy.
This is Kimberly and I'm on.
From AdCom, Jackie or Amy.
Amy's here.
Beth from Eagle.
From Eagle County, I'm here.
Valicia from Sterling.
Felicia's here.
Jeffco, Jeff. Connie from Delta.
This is Connie from Delta.
Deanie or Shannon from Douglas. All right, hearing nobody from Douglas. From Denver, Andrew or Jennifer.
Hey, Ollie, it's Andrew, and Jen Schwartz is actually retired, so I'll send you an email with new alternate information.
This is Holly. Okay, thanks, Andrew. I'll keep an eye out for that. From Jeffcom, Michael or Kyle.
Yeah, this is Michael Brewer. I'm present.
From Aurora, I know Scott is here, or Tina. From Thornton, Sean, Brandy, or Ashley.
Sean's here.
Okay. From Wesco, Mandy or Matt?
This is Mandy, I'm here, and Holly, just you accidentally, it looks like copied Ashley's email down into my email. Just for records.
Thank you. This is Holly.
you're
I'll
welcome.
fix that.
Okay.
And representing Garfield, Carl
Carl's here.
or Tom?
I just heard Carl.
And representing Boulder, Patty or Christine?
Patty's on the call.
This is Holly. We have 90%. And with that, I will turn it back over to Scott.
Thank you, Holly. This is Scott. With that, if anybody have any question or the amendments for the November 2021 meeting? And if not, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Carl. I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Carl. Motion. Can I get a second?
This is Mandy, I'll give a second.
Thank you, Mandy. Appreciate it. Any opposed, please say aye. None opposed, Holly, so we'll move forward. So with that, would like to hand over, we're doing our presentation first for accessing grants on regional GIS projects from Kathy Andrade and from Sidwell. So with that, Kathy, why don't we go ahead and turn it over to you for your presentation.
Hi, good morning. And actually, this is Kathy. And actually, Holly, I don't know if you see David Moss, he's going to be presenting and leading the presentation. So I don't know if you can make him presenter so that he can put up the slides if possible.
This is Holly. I do believe that everyone at this point should have sharing access.
Okay.
If you don't, try sharing and it'll send me alert that I need to allow you to share.
Got it. Okay. And David, are you on the call?
Yes.
Okay. See David there.
Press to share right now. Can everybody, can everybody see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So I will kick this off really quick. Good morning, and thank you so much for allowing us to present today. Again, my name is Kathy Andrade Ulloa, and I'm the account executive for government organizations in the state of Colorado. So your account executive. We are happy and excited to be here, and we really hope that this presentation is enlightening and informative. As David will tell you, please feel free to ask any questions during the presentation, but also please don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions after the fact, or even if you don't really know what questions to ask, we can help you understand how GIS fits into the picture. We're a full service GIS firm here at Sidwell, and we're one of the top GIS firms in the nation. We have nearly a century of experience, and our core competency is implementing GIS for government agencies. So we are a Gold Esri partner, and so one of the top tier partners with the gold standard in terms of GIS software is. Our services range from planning and helping you understand how GIS can best be leveraged in your organization, to creating, transforming, and bettering your data in GIS. So we work with some of the most complex data and largest data sets, and we do it well. We can also be your GIS partner. So if you don't have internal resources or sufficient GIS internal resources, we can step in both as a stepping stone or indefinitely, and we do that for a lot of organizations. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. So now I'll pass it along to David Moss, and David Moss is our Director of GIS Strategic Enterprise Planning, who is an expert in this regard, and so he'll be leading the presentation for you today.
Well, thank you guys for having us today. We do appreciate it. And so one of the things I like to do is one of my favorite quotes here from Sun Tzu, The Art of War. And even though people think that that book may be a little too much, I think it's exactly what we need at GIS. I look at everything as a battle, but it can be a win-win battle, right? But we go into it and that's such. And so I always look at what you want to do here is you got to be strategic about how you do what you want to do and what you want to get done. So one of my biggest things is when I worked at Maricopa County here in Phoenix, Arizona, prior to being with Sidwell, I sat down and I'm like, okay, I plan on being here at least 5 years, right? So I'm like, okay, what are the issues, the problems, and how do I go about getting it done? If you can't get certain things done in a certain amount of time period, you gotta keep pushing. You gotta keep moving forward to do those things. And I was able to get budget that was not available, able to increase staff and do these things in the 7 years I was there. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that the strategic funding process I'm gonna share with you guys, I use this every day. I've used this for 17 years, no matter what size of the project, all the way from millions of dollars, all the way down to $10,000. It has worked 100% of the time. Now, does it work 100% of the time the first time you do it? No. But as you go through and doing the process, you will find more and more information that you can apply to do the process again. And it was just kind of being a badger about it and getting what I needed to pull the job and do the job. As I explain some of these things to you, one of the things I've always told folks is I've never had a boss look at a presentation I presented on why we need to do something and just say, you know what, we're not doing it. We, then give a reason to say, I don't want to do it. I've never had that happen. And so what I always tell folks is by using this process, what you're going to do is you're going to put your executives in the position to go left or right, and they have to pick a direction. Normally what I've seen in government happen is you don't do that, so then people either stay on the fence and decide not to do anything because they don't know what happens by not going one direction or another. And so this process here that I have, it helps you put the decision-making in your executives' hands where they have to make a decision. And that may take a couple months for that decision to be had, but the decision will be had by following this process. So the first thing I always tell folks is understand your jurisdiction environment. And a lot of folks tell me a lot of times that, oh, we know this. I'm like, well, who are the political players and how is your budget allocated? And that's from the federal dollars. Towards the end of this presentation, I do have some resource links that kind of where you can go to see where some of the, what monies is coming out of the ARPA funds, as well as the new Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And you got to know, how is your jurisdiction going to do that? Here in Maricopa, the way it happened is we got so much money allocated for the ARPA, I think it was like $430 million. Then they had a process. The process was you put together a one-pager document on where you want to spend the money, how you want to do it. You submit it to your CIO or your director. Your director puts it in the bucket, county manager and the board pick, and then you are off and running on the project. Okay, so once I understood that, then I understand, okay, who make the decisions on where the budget goes. My biggest thing I tell people all the time is an issue of is there enough budget? The issue is, do they want to give the budget to you directly? The person that is requesting the budget, do they want to give it to you? Because as we all know, when something has blown up, a server has died, or say a system has got hacked, recently there was an agency that got hacked a couple of years ago. They found, $10 million to unhack their systems to get things up and running. So the money is always available. It's just getting you access to it. Now, once you know the players and how the budget and the system operates, also your general fund budget, do you have an internal service fund? I was able to move GIS monies from my general fund budget into an internal service fund, as well as have budget other departments. Because what I found out is most of my departments didn't want to give me the monies because they wanted to see the money directly. When they gave it to IT, which is where I was at, it was like a black hole, right? You get the money to IT, and then you're not quite sure where it went. And so what I would do is like, look, I need 20K to do this work for you this year. You keep it in your budget, and then I'll meet with you throughout the year on how I'm going to spend that. And then we were in a June to July cycle. I'm like, okay, by February, if I'm not going to spend it, then you can spend it on whatever you want. And they were like, really? And yeah. So because it was in the departmental budget, guess who didn't see that budget? My CIO didn't see it. Why? Because it was in a department budget. So if you take 20K out of 30 departments, well, I only had to convince one person per department to spend that money, and it was not my CIO. So that's how I was able to do the different things in my area. And it may be similar to yours. Also, the strategic plan. There's the 5 W's in how, why, what, who, where, when. So overall, you want to have that plan of how you're going to manage this, what you're going to do, how much it costs, and we're going to dive into that in a few slides. And then that is something that you want to have, one, written down. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be 60 pages, but you got to have it written down on how you're going to tackle this project. Also, part of this is you got to have an assessment. Either you can do a self-assessment, or you go, what I like best is find funding to do an independent assessment with your partners. Why? Because even though I go tell people they need to do this, hey, your GIS system is legacy, out of date, you need to upgrade. They're like, well, are you really telling me that? Or are you just trying to get me to upgrade? But then when I go get an assessment that I paid for that says that, oh, you paid for it, so it must be true. Okay, what I got to do to make this happen? So sometimes you're saying something, but they're not quite, I like to use this term, they hear you, but they're not listening. And sometimes you have to go get a partner to get them to listen. And I do that same thing in my household. I'll tell my wife, hey, we should do this. The car acting funky. And she's like, well, I didn't hear that. Then I take it to the mechanic. He write it up and say, yeah, if you don't do this, the wheel's going to fall off in a couple months. I hand it to my wife. She's like, okay, we need to do that. As long as the work is done, I don't really care who gets the credit for that. Also, sharing. The 4 stages you have to share. Once you get your assessment, you make an executive summary with the assessment and your strategic plan on how you're going to do all these things, and then you have to share this. Now, you may keep doing this process for a while, depending on who you're sharing it with, but first, you got to share with the political players in the group that you're looking for, and then also you got to have some other things with that, which we'll get into. So on the first part of the phase, step 1, who are the political decision makers? What are their goals for 2022? One of the biggest things I see a lot of times is people that are submitting a project assume everybody knows the importance of what the project is just like you do. But you got to remember, you're the expert. Your executive leadership, they are managing the whole county, your whole jurisdiction. They don't know the intimate details. Prime example, at the county, we had a 20-year-old GIS road information system that all of McDOT used to determine what roads they maintain for Maricopa County, which is in Phoenix, Arizona, which is the 4th largest county in the nation. That system, we could only update twice a year. And then it took a team of 2, 80% of the time to maintain that. And we couldn't even tell all the roads that we owned in the county. My guys came to me when I first started and said, David, this is a huge problem. We need to get it fixed. So I'm like, does executive leadership know? He's like, yes, they know. I'm like, who told them? Where is it written down? Guess what? It may have mentioned in meetings, but if it's not written down, it doesn't mean anything. So that's the first thing we did, was we wrote down what the problems were, and I handed it to everyone. I went to the director first, shared it with the director, got her input, said, hey, can I share this with all your managers? And then we all agreed it was a problem. Once we agreed it was a problem, that's your first step to get through that. And so understanding their goals, plus understanding their goals is how you're going to get the problem solved. In this case, the director of McDOT wanted to be able to check every road she maintained within 5 minutes. Well, you can't do that if you're using this system I have that's old and outdated. So we tied her goal to that. And then since that was already her goal, then we could get that job completed. And we were able to do that. And they funded the whole situation out of budget, which means we didn't prepare to get that funded in that budget cycle. They found money elsewhere in their budget to fund that project. Also, what, your jurisdiction allocating the federal dollars, what are they used for? Like, how can you use those? I have some links on the federal ARPA monies and overall what it can be used for. But as you know, in the federal guidelines, it's very loose. So with this, you want to make sure you check with your grant personnel. That everybody usually has somebody that either writes grants or works with the grants at your jurisdiction. Check with them to make sure how they are categorizing projects to fit in those buckets. And then also verify that the decision makers support the concept of your project. And you can do this over lunch, over individual meetings. I do not do this with one meeting with every decision maker in it. I do it individually, and then I get pointers from them on, oh, this happened last time or whatnot. So that's how I would tackle that. Because people are willing to tell you individually, one-on-one, if they have a problem or what happened, but they're not necessarily inclined to do that in a group setting. Now, step 2 is once you have that understanding, then you want to go into your strategic plan. What is the fundamental problem? What is the project scope? In depth, really understand that. As you talk to each of those decision political makers, they're going to tell you what their issue is with that project or that problem individually. They're going to tell you each of their individual issues. And then you want to look into why, understand the problem, seek any drivers or contribute to the issue. Well, why is that an issue? Why is that an issue for one department and not someone else? Those type of scenarios. And then when? When is the timeline to really complete this and when we should move forward? Also, you'll find out, okay, when we try to do this years past, we ran into these issues and understanding. Also, if you're doing a project like renovating a whole PSAP or putting in new infrastructure in there, more than likely that was done or attempted to be done in prior years. You do need to understand why it failed. Because people's like, well, I don't want to understand, I wasn't here. I get that, but understanding why something failed can help you. Prime example, when I started at Maricopa County, we've always tried to get one address or one addressing data set. Well, the issue was elections been doing addresses for years, and that's what they were doing. We had addresses just for McDonald roads, and then assessors had addresses for brand new parcels or splits that happened, but not had gotten approved yet, but they need to have it. Well, we couldn't, the reason they had met for years trying to get one, well, there was 2 main issues. One, our office, which was in IT, wanted to be the owner of everything. Well, then that means everybody had to give up what they were doing and say they wasn't doing a good job so IT can own it. Well, that was a deal breaker. And then 2, there was no process to say, or if one person owned it, how do we get changes to that group? How do they respond? What's their response rate? And then do we trust that they're going to do that? So when I sat down with elections and assessors, like, look, we want to do one. Can I represent the one data set that goes to the public, but you guys do your individual ones, and then we'll join it. And then if public requests it, they'll come to us because we have a bigger system to manage all the public records requests, but you guys are going to own each of your individual parts. And then we're going to build a system to then talk to you. Well, elections was like, yeah, I don't mind doing that, David, but I need additional person on staff to make this happen. So I went with elections to their board, the county manager, to get an additional person, which took a year for them to do it. And so far, for the last 3 years, they've been building it out to the point where now, 3 years later, we have a central set that we all can share, and then we can get it out to the public. But that's the thing, understanding why it failed in past, and then addressing those by, thinking outside the box goes a long way. Also, where is the problem or the people impacted, or where there may be a perceived issue. Sometimes with these projects, there's a perceived issue, but it really isn't true, but nobody has said or gave information and metric that doesn't happen. All right, who's directly or indirectly involved with the project rollout, or may have been causing this issue, where we had one where for a long time, when we got data from our sheriff's office in the notes field, they put everything in there. They put people's addresses, they'll put social security numbers, everything, because it catches everything, because they had an older, outdated 911 CAS system, so they use a notes field for everything. Well, that means that my staff had to be TOC certified just to do analysis, because we didn't know what we were going to see in the notes field. So once we did that and proved that our environment could handle that type of data and not get out, and we had the right protocols in place, and we showed it by putting it in writing, had our team get the FBI fingerprinting, guess what? Sheriff's Office was willing to give us that data, and we were the only group in Maricopa County to have data in the general network, because we had it locked down. So usually you're in, I think, in a higher network. We used to call it network number 2 and network number 3. We were the only one to be able to have that data because of that. Also, how much, and you have to know not only how much, you have to also know the implementation costs, the initial cost, the long-term cost with maintenance. Also, people forget yearly training of admins and users. Always put that in there. Do not say, oh, we're going to do training elsewhere because I'm trying to get the price down. The price is the price. The question isn't the price, the question is the value. Does the customer see the value in your project? And if they do, it could be 100 mil, it could be 5 million. They see the value and they understand that, then you're fine. Also with that is understanding the owners of the systems, and then understanding understanding like who's going to do what in that maintenance, right? You want to know maintenance for 5 years out. Like, okay, we're going to be paying this maintenance. Well, how do we split the maintenance up? If you are an organization that has multiple jurisdictions, or we're going to do it by population, or we're going to do it by actual calls. But you have to have that worked out. One thing I tell folks is when you're going to executives to propose something, you do not want a whole bunch of answers they have to answer, a whole bunch of questions they have to answer. You want to say, all right, maintenance is this cost. Option A is to do it by calls. Here's what that looks like. Option B is to do it by population. Here's what that look like. Please give me your input. Everybody I know, if you give them multiple options and have them to input something, it goes extremely well versus you get everybody together and say, okay, guys, we're going to brainstorm how we're going to pull this off. And I never see that work well, because everybody has their own understanding or their own goals in mind and things like that, and it just doesn't happen. If you guys are big in college football, that's why they can't get the college playoffs to happen. Everybody says they want college playoffs in college football, but can't nobody agree to it because they have everything else they're worrying about. And in the meantime, the SEC is just killing it and adding more people in there. And they're like, well, if you don't want to do it, we don't care. We get 2 to 3 schools in the football championship now every year. So that's why it's hard to have people come together to agree versus, hey, here's your options. We're doing this. How do we make the options better? Also, step 3 is the self-assessment, right? This is pretty simple. You just want to get your self-assessment or get your partner to set your infrastructure, your architecture and process. Now be careful, because once you do a self-assessment or a paid assessment, right? That's a public records request. And now you are stating, here's all the issues. So make sure you got your plan and everything together. Your boss is okay with you doing the self-assessment, and you got the assessment, because once you do that assessment, now you're saying we're gonna fix something. We have to go look at that. Why? Because you're identifying holes, and Lord, if something happens, you get hacked or people get into your system or whatnot, then you have that issue there. Now, from a 911 standpoint, I do know there was some money out of the infrastructure bill that was moved around that took money out. But what they did do is put a boatload of money into cybersecurity. Now, good news is about 70% of the population or people don't really know what it takes for cybersecurity. So everything can fall into cybersecurity. All right. So what I usually do is when I was in GIS, I would have the security team assess my environment. And of course, they're going to find, they'll find, oh, you need to secure this more, or identity access and management isn't really done properly. The passwords don't reset. your domain controllers are too old. But when they do all that, guess what happens? Now I can potentially use cybersecurity funding to then replace all of that in the proper cybersecurity environment, so that way we're protecting our jurisdiction. Cybersecurity is very hot right now. And usually when I talk about projects and rolling out projects, I tell folks, look at your environment and what does people care about the most at that given time, and tie your project to it. And that's how I was able to get $300K in my funding to redo my whole GIS infrastructure. When I started in June, right? Budget was gone, but my boss had a goal of, he wanted to be the best. He wanted our environment to be the best enterprise environment, and also to listen to these security rules. Well, when I did the assessment, I was able to tell them, look, we're not nowhere close to that. You can't hold me accountable personally, and you can't hold my team accountable, because here's what I need. And I did this whole process. Here's what I need to pull this off. So now the ball's in his court. Do I want David to have an enterprise environment and to reach my goals and hold him accountable? Or I want David to sit there and do nothing. And until that decision is made, I didn't do anything. I didn't try to magically do some of it on my own, because that's the thing, right? If you say you need something, you got to stick to that. You can't go and do stuff on your own and try to make it work, because if it doesn't work, what that shares is, well, you asked for something you didn't need and now you made a mess of it. Or let's say you do get it to work with all this work, and they're like, oh, you don't ever need those extra resources. You can just do it on your own. And then every project after that, they assume you're going to do that level. So when you ask for stuff, you have to stick to what you ask for. Now, fourth process is the share mode, right? So you definitely want to have your executive meetings with your champions first, or with your boss, and then your champions, high-level assessment and high-level plan, how they go together. Here's what we assessed, here's the plan and the high-level costs and everything, and do that. You may have to do that a couple times, right? Get that going. And then also in that strategic plan, you attach it to goals for each agency, right? If you got 3 agencies, you're going to have slightly different goals. Hey, this is going to help the sheriff's office this way. This is going to help the assessor's office this way. This is going to help our citizens this way. Because you're pitching it to the county manager office. You got to be slightly different. You can't have it the same for everybody. Now, good news is this does take a little bit of work initially to get this going. But once you do this process once, you have all the intricacies that you need in step 1 and 2 to just re-implement those things over and over again for 2, 3, and 4, right? Also, once it's approved, right? Once the project is approved, you have to share the status of the project with everyone frequently. Put it in your county or your city newsletter, updating everybody. Don't wait for people to come to you for an update. That's the worst thing you could do. Even if it's going bad, even if you had a step back where you're 2 months out, you need an extra 2 months or whatever, keep doing it and showcasing what's going well, what's not, and then pivot as you need to. Because what that shares is one, now that you have it, you're going to roll this out come hell or high water. And that's how you got to do it. Also, once you finish, and this is these last 2, right? Sharing the status updates frequently and being open about where it's going. And then also sharing the system metrics for a year after you roll it out. You roll out a new PSAP, right? And now you can take, multi-messages, or how many voice, video calls that you do in a quarter that saves somebody's life. How many times people send text messages that save somebody's life in that quarter. You have to showcase that and show back. Hey, we did this. Here's how it's benefiting us. And then also submit some awards to recognize your jurisdiction and your county champions. Because all that does overall is that shares with next time when you need to upgrade that system again or do something different, you have that trust built up that they know you're going to spend the money wisely, you're going to complete the project, and you're going to make them look good. Because when you go and you submit projects in, or you talk to executives, right, there's 3 things your executives care about, and they care about them in different orders. How does this project help, my constituents, or help me? How much does it cost? How long is it going to take? Those are the 3 things that, depending on the executive you're talking to, they depends on what they want in that order, but those are the three things you always have to solve and convince them that that's helping them in the way that they're doing what they're doing. Now, here are the resources for some of these bills. You guys, just looking at the roll call and researching your group, you guys are really on top of understanding the different topics and things that you have. So I just put these up there if there were some folks that was not aware of these. There's great information. Good news is, whenever I do my strategy, I look at federal documents, county documents, state documents, and I try to tie my things to not only the county or city goals, but also federal goals, right? Because when I do that, then it makes it look like, one, okay, I'm knowledgeable about these things enough, titles in, plus they can use that for grants elsewhere and things of that nature. We had one particular grant, and I have one more slide after this, just our actual contact information. So this is the last slide. But we had one particular grant that our public health team was going for. They were looking for a grant for $750,000 over 5 years to show how low-income folks in certain zip codes had a higher rate of pregnancy and high school dropout. So when I heard about it, I was like, hey, let's make a couple web maps that you could put in your grant proposal highlighting where this is and how you would take advantage of that. And we were able to win that grant by putting an extra little bit in there to do that. And then we were also able to showcase their results every year as they were doing work in the field, working with the community, things like that. And we were showing over time how that was changing as they were building out the processes in the field. And that went well to earn that grant and moving forward with that. So, we have the infrastructure, the full bill, but the NACO ones are very good. I liked the NACO with the summary, where it kind of goes over where you can look at. For 911, I believe you guys would definitely fall in, take advantage of some of the transportation funding, right? Because they want to replace the roads, the actual bridges. Well, all that data got to be categorized in GIS and updated and maintained, which you will use some of that same data, right? To do addressing better, to also go rescue folks, right? Because I know with our sheriff's office, they had, with their CAS system, they need to know the bridges, how they instruct the streets so they could do the routing and things of that nature. So I definitely think you could take advantage there. They also had an area where they were looking at resiliency. Okay, if you have an older 10-year-old system, there's no way that system is resilient. So you can definitely take advantage there as well. Also, you have the 911 self-assessment tool, if you want to use that to kind of see where you are. Also, they had the 2009 roadmap that had a lot of great information in there and links to different things as well. And then also the publications was good. They had some GIS information in there, kind of how to do your GIS information to really take advantage of 911 and show where you have holes. But one thing I always tell folks is, no matter if you're new or you've been at an agency for any given time, every year you need to assess the holes in and how you do your process or your business and bring that forward, right? I would always look and say, okay, here's what we fixed last year. Do we have any holes that are causing us? The first couple of years, you will have holes as you change processes, get new staff and build out new systems. But I always want to put the decision in my boss's hands, right? And let them know, here's where we stand today. Here's where we need to go. And here's how it attached to your goals as running this department. And that way, I always let them have the decision on deciding to do something or not do something. I think sometimes we take that decision away and we make it for our executive. Well, I always like to let them make that decision and then own that accountability and responsibility. And by doing that, I've always found that they always sided on the options that I provided. So that's all I have for you guys today. Hopefully it was informative and you could definitely take advantage and use it. If you want some more information on those different steps, I mean, it's hard to do everything in 30 minutes, but if you wanted more additional information on those steps and things, definitely email me, hit up Kathy as well. We do provide this, service of helping you put these plans together and understanding your actual, the politics. 'Cause I know not everybody likes politics, but that's the thing. If you enjoy the politics and how to get the job done, you will be able to get the job done, because that's where it starts, right? The relationship building, understanding what your executives are looking for and needing, and then meeting that problem with the GIS, with what you're doing. It always works out well.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Does anybody have any questions for David? A lot of great information.
Let me.
This is Holly. There was just, and I apologize if this already was answered, but somebody did ask if they could have the links that you shared emailed out.
Yes.
If you want to send that to Daryl or myself, we can get those out to the full task force.
Okay. I will send that right now.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Well, thank you, David. You and Kathy are welcome to stay, or you can go. We do appreciate the presentation, and this will be, this whole meeting, including the presentation, will be posted on the task force's YouTube page after the meeting today.
Thank you guys for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. We do appreciate it.
Thank you, Daryl, as well. So this is Scott. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda for 2022 task force election. We do have some officer appointments. So I believe, Daryl, correct me if I'm wrong, we need to appoint a vice chair and then just briefly have a discussion around the secretary position, correct?
This is Daryl. That is correct. So according to our bylaws, every January, the vice chair becomes the new chair. So congratulations, Scott. You'll hold that position for a year. We need to elect a replacement vice chair. The vice chair does have to be a voting member of the task force. And the secretary is up for election every year. The secretary can be a member of the task force, a voting member of the task force, or a employee of the Public Utilities Commission. Holly has been serving in that position for the last year, and Holly has said that she is willing to continue serving in that position unless somebody else wants it. So Scott, I would recommend opening it up for nominations from the floor for vice chair first, and then we'll see where we go after that.
Great, thank you, Daryl. Again, this is Scott. And with that, we'll open up to the floor for nominations for vice chair.
This is Holly. Scott, maybe it'd be helpful if we kind of gave a breakdown of what that position includes and what people might expect they'd be doing in that position.
Sure, I can. Thank you, Holly. This is Scott. I can just give from my perspective, serving as the vice chair last year, there was very little I had to do. Fortunately, Carl was always involved and engaged and administered all the meetings. If there was a circumstance where I could not attend the meeting, then the vice chair would facilitate the meeting in my place. Periodically, there are times that organizations or groups reach out to the task force, and myself and at the time Carl as the chair and Daryl and Holly would collaborate, help to recommend, this should be a presentation to the task force or there is a specific committee. We did work with T-Mobile when Patrick had to leave to bring on another candidate to fill his role for the wireless role position. So it hasn't been onerous. There's not been, it hasn't been difficult. It's actually been enjoyable. And I do think it's the time commitment is not, again, a burden or onerous. So I might not be doing very good justice to that, but Carl or Daryl or Holly, anything else that you'd like to add?
This is Carl. I think you summed it up well. I think it's just having that support there. And then basically Holly and Daryl did a lot of the work.
This is Daryl. I would agree that you summed it up well. I think, one of the biggest jobs of the vice chair is to be involved in the decisions with the chair so that when you take over in a year, you have an idea of what you're getting into. So it's almost like a shadowing position.
This is Scott. Thank you both. Does anybody on the floor have questions about the role? And if not, again, we can definitely open it up for nominations.
I hear crickets.
Yes, don't be shy, folks. Well, I suppose we could, since I was called out last year, I suppose we could call out a few folks. I was wondering, actually, I was thinking, even though it's probably very minor, I do think it was good, the arrangement that we had Carl from being in the mountain agency and then myself being in the metro agency. If we had a similar kind of arrangement, just shows, we, as a group, we are collaborating statewide. It's not just a metro area kind of focus. So with that being said, would any of the folks from Westco, Grand Junction, any of those areas, or on our eastern slopes or north or south, like to also consider taking on that role?
Jennifer, is this something you'd be interested in doing?
I'd be happy to serve, but I didn't want to take the opportunity from anybody else because I'm involved in an awful lot of things. So I wanted to make sure that other people had a chance to be involved.
This is Joe Benkert. Is the expectation that the vice chair would succeed next year as the chair, or whenever that opens up?
So according to the bylaws, the vice chair becomes the chair at the January meeting. So Jennifer, if you were to be elected vice chair today, you would be vice chair for 2022. And then in January of 2023, you would become the chair for a year.
I'm happy to stand for election, but I'd also love to hear from Mandy or anybody else on the Western Slope here to see if they are interested.
So Jennifer, thank you for that. This is Mandy for the recording. And while I appreciate your confidence in this, I'm not certain that this is something that I want to or can take on at this time. So I would support your nomination, Jennifer. And I realize you are busy and heavily involved in so many things. So please consider, your workload and that you can handle it.
Thanks.
And this is Scott. Jennifer, just so you know, I too was really concerned when I got nominated last year. At the time, I was doing about 2.5 jobs here at the city, and I was just really worried I wouldn't have the time. And again, I've been pleasantly surprised. It has not been an impact on my workload at all. So if that helps with your consideration at all.
Oh, I'm happy to serve, and I know that Daryl and Holly make it very easy to serve in this capacity. As I said, I just want to make sure that others have a chance to participate before jumping in, because we have a lot of talent over here on the Western Slope and in the mountain region, and I'd like to make sure that everybody has a chance to be involved.
Thank you for that, Jennifer. Is there anybody else interested from the mountain community that would like to also be involved? Well, then I believe we do have a nomination for Jennifer. So Daryl, should we go ahead and proceed to a vote then?
I think if there are no other nominations, that would be appropriate.
Great. Last chance. Any other nominations? Okay. Well,
And
go on.
Scott, in previous times, since there's only one nominee, I think you could probably just do a voice vote. If you would prefer, though, we can do it by email. People can email me their votes, but since there's only one nominee, it would probably be better to just do a voice vote. Be a lot faster anyway.
Thank you, Daryl. I agree. That would be much quicker. So with that, go ahead and call the vote. Can I get a motion? Or I guess we don't need an emotion formally. We just need to do a vote. Is that correct?
I think for a nomination, that is correct.
Great, thank you. So all in favor of Jennifer becoming our news vice chair for the 911 task force, please say aye.
Aye.
This is Holly. Sorry. I think it might make more sense for all opposed to, because we can't see who all said aye via voice. So I would recommend that we say all opposed.
Thanks, Holly. That's a great point. So I'll revise that. Any opposed to Jennifer's nomination for becoming our vice chair this year, please say no now. Great. Well, congratulations, Jennifer. You were unanimously adopted as the vice chair. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to working with you on it.
Thank you, and thanks, Carl, for the nomination.
You're welcome.
So
Thank
Scott,
you.
that leads us to the secretary position. Holly did say that she's willing to serve for another year. Holly, I think your job load is actually higher than mine right now. So if you want a break, I'd be willing to do it for a year. Or if there's somebody from the task force who would like to do it instead, that's fine too. So Scott, I think we just open up for other nominations.
And this is Scott. Thanks again, Daryl. I agree. I will say also it is, as Carl mentioned and a few others, Daryl and Holly really do make this job really easy. They do a lot of the work, and Holly has graciously agreed she's willing to continue to serve in that role. But in the meantime, are there any other parties who would be interested in taking on the role and serving as secretary? All right, hearing none, then we'll do the same thing, Holly, just for the count purposes. Any who are opposed to Holly maintaining her role as secretary for the year, please indicate by saying yes now. And hearing none, Holly, you also were unanimously voted into the role. So thank you again. Appreciate your willingness to continue to serve in the role. And so moving on to the next item, Daryl, we also have Resource Center appointments.
This is Daryl. Yes, the Resource Center has staggered elections. 4 of the Resource Center positions are elected by the task force. The 5th one is appointed by the Public Utilities Commission, which is myself. My position is up this year, but because it's appointed by the commission, it doesn't need to be up for a vote. So there's only one other position that's up this year, and that's Vicky Pickett's position. Vicky was on the call earlier, but she had to step away. I talked to her by text, and she is willing to run again. If somebody else wants to run, though, we can take nominations, and the Resource Center board positions do not have to be voting members. It can be a non-voting participant on the task force. So Scott, I would suggest opening it up for other nominations. Otherwise, we have a nomination on the table.
Great, thank you, Daryl. This is Scott again. And yes, I would open it up the floor to any additional nominations. And hearing none, Daryl, then I think we'll do the same thing. And just a real quick recap for the group as well. So even though Vicky has moved on, she's still, there's nothing in the structure of the Resource Center that would prevent her from continuing to serve in that role, correct?
That's correct. Since they don't have to be voting members of the task force, they just have to be appointed by the task force. It really doesn't matter what her day job is, as long as the task force is comfortable with her continuing to serve in that position.
Great, thank you for the clarification. So again, any concerns or any other nominations? Didn't hear any. So would any folks, I'll call the question, anybody who is opposed to allowing Vicky to remain in that role for the year 2022, please say so now. And hearing none, it sounds like, Daryl, that Vicky will continue in that role. And we also thank her again for continuing that function, even though she has moved on. That's going to be a great resource to have her be able to continue to assist us.
Yep. Oh, and by the way, for people who don't know, Vicky has moved on from JeffCom, but she is still working in 911. She's with the National Emergency Number Association now. So it'll actually be good to have that sort of connection between the two organizations, I think.
Absolutely, I agree. All right, I apologize again, this is Scott. So thank you, Daryl, and we'll move on to the next item. So standing reports, Daryl, I'll hand it over to you for the PUC update.
This is Daryl. Thank you, Scott. So the 911 grant update, as of the date of the task force meeting, which is today, obviously, all payment requests should have been completed, and Holly has reported to me that all payments, not only payment requests have been processed, but all payments have been processed. So we are done, other than our wrap-up reports to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and NTIA, which are jointly administering this grant. There was a grant program, a new grant program included in the Build Back Better bill for $500 million. Only $470 million of that would actually go to 911 programs at the state or local level. As most people on this call probably know, that bill is currently stalled in Congress. We don't know if it's going to go anywhere or not. There is a chance that the grant program itself may be pulled out and run as a standalone or separate bill. If that happens, I'll try to keep everybody up to date as to what's going on with that. So as of right now, with the closing of our existing grant, we do not have a federal grant coming up to replace that. So we're relying again on our state and local funds. PUC proceedings, there is a draft 911 reliability improvement rules that has been with the Attorney General's office for a few months now. They have been exceedingly busy, the busiest I've ever seen them in terms of their workload, and they simply have not had time to review it and provide input, which they like to do on all rulemakings before they come before the commission. I do have a meeting with them later this month, and they have told me that they believe we can get this out in the first quarter of this year. I'm going to keep working to try to get that out as soon as possible, because this has been, the 911 community has been waiting for this for a very long time. So we're going to keep working on that. FCC proceedings. On December 20th, the FCC issued a public notice calling for comments on a petition for rulemaking that was filed by the National Association of State 911 Administrators, or NASNA. The petition for rulemaking was prompted by states such as California and Maine that have full NG911 networks or close to full NG911 networks and NG911 PSAPs in place, but are missing participation from some originating service providers. And so the petition calls on the commission to issue rules that will, one, require OSPs, originating service providers, to deliver 911 calls to 911 network service providers in SIP format or NENA I3 format as appropriate and as requested by the 911 systems themselves. To create an NG911 register similar to the text to 911 registry, so that PSAPs or states can indicate to OSPs that they are ready to start receiving calls in SIP or NENA I3 format, including location information. And three, clarify that the costs of delivering calls to the BESP, or what they call in other states the 911 system service provider, is the responsibility of the originating service provider unless state law or regulation provides cost recovery to the OSP. In issuing the public notice, the FCC also opened a new proceeding, public safety docket number 21-479, 21-479, if you want to look that up on the FCC's website later. The title of that is Facilitating Implementation of Next Generation 911 Services. I take that as a good sign that the FCC is considering additional action following this public comment period on the petition. The fact that they opened a whole new proceeding and gave it a new title and number tells me that they do plan on taking additional action later. Comments on the petition are due by January 19th, with reply comments due by February 3rd. The commission, the Public Utilities Commission, approved comments to be filed in that proceeding at yesterday's Commissioner Weekly meeting. I plan on getting those e-filed on Friday, tomorrow. When I do, I will send out a copy to the task force for your review and awareness. State legislature, on January 21st, I will be delivering the annual State of 911 report presentation to the Joint Business Affairs and Labor Committee. When I have more information about what time to expect that and how to tune in remotely, I will send that out over the task force email list. Right now, I just have a general time of sometime between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. We will be going after the annual SMART Act presentation from the Department of Regulatory Agencies. So I may not be able to provide you with a specific time because it depends on how fast those presentations go and how many questions there are from the committee for the DORA executive director. There shouldn't be any big surprises in it. This is a review of and summary of what is in the written State of 911 report, which was delivered to the legislature before September 15th of 2021. So there shouldn't be any huge surprises in it, but if anybody would like to tune in and watch, I'll make sure that you have that information. Federal legislation, I already mentioned the grant program and the Build Back Better bill. Don't know what's going to happen with that, but we'll be watching. There are a number of other federal bills related to 911 that have been sitting in Congress for some time, but to my knowledge, none of those have had any movement to them. We'll continue watching to see if any of them do start moving again. Implementation of the state 911 surcharge and flat wireless prepaid 911 surcharge. The state 911 surcharge distributions were very low in November, and I warned everybody when those went out that they were low, but that we were hoping to see a oversized distribution in December to make up for it, and that's exactly what we did see. So our average in 2021 was a little under $600,000 a month going out to all of the 911 authorities from the state 911 surcharge. In November, it was only $286,000, but in December it was $885,000. So it did make up for it the next month. A lot of that, I think, comes down to—
Daryl, I apologize. This is the interpreter. Could you say those numbers again?
Sure. So for the average in 2021, the average distribution of the state 911 surcharge to the 911 authorities was $600,000 per month. In November, it was only $286,000, but we made up for that with a larger distribution in December of $885,000. And I think that difference is mainly due to the billing cycle and the end of the month falling on a weekend, which caused some of the carriers to be a little late in their remittance of the surcharge funds in November. Prepaid was similar. We've been averaging about $881,000 a month in 2021. If you only include the new surcharge rate, it was averaging a little over $1 million a month from the prepaid. In November, it was only $817,000, but in December, we made up for that with a larger distribution of 1.2 or almost 1.3 million. So they had the same problem with the prepaid distribution. So it wasn't just the state 911 surcharge that saw a little bit of a dip and then a commensurate bump in December. Emergency telephone charge deadline reminders. I just wanted to remind people of a couple of deadlines coming up. March 1st is the last day to file an application with the commission to increase your emergency telephone charge above the threshold established by the commission and have any hope of it being approved in time for a June 1 effective date.
Will you say that date again?
March 1st. March 1st is the deadline to file an application with the commission from a local 911 authority to increase your telephone charge above the threshold established by the commission. And that threshold is currently set at $1.81. So you can raise your 911 authority board through a proper vote and resolution can raise your surcharge rate up to $1.81 effective June 1st. Because the statute now restricts effective dates to either February 1st or June 1st. But if you need to go above that, March 1st is the deadline for getting an application filed with the commission. Now, I do have to give a caveat there. Filing it by March 1st is the last day it could possibly be approved by the commission, but that does not guarantee that it will be approved by the commission. And if there are any problems with the application, it can take longer to approve. So we really encourage people to apply as soon as possible so that if there are problems, we can work with you to try to get those applications completed in time for a approval prior to the deadline. And the reason for that deadline is because the statute still requires that you provide 60 days notice to the carriers once the new surcharge is approved, or the new emergency telephone charge is approved, and the commission has a 30-day comment period built into applications. So that means that there is a 90-day period before the June 1st deadline that you have to have built into your process for increasing that emergency telephone charge. And then July 1st is the last day to file an application with the commission for an increase to the number of concurrent sessions for emergency for reimbursement beginning in 2023. So you are each getting reimbursements from the state 911 surcharge based on how many concurrent sessions you are paying for at your public safety answering points. If those number of concurrent sessions has increased, you have to file an application with the commission in order for the commission to start reimbursing you for those. And those new reimbursements would start next year in January of 2023. July 1st is the deadline in our rules for filing those applications. So be thinking about that. I know Adams County, for instance, has added several concurrent sessions for a backup center. In order to start getting reimbursed for those concurrent sessions, or if there's any other 911 authority that has added any concurrent sessions, you will need to file an application with the commission to start getting that reimbursement. Forms for both an emergency telephone charge application and a concurrent session increase application can both be found on the website. There's a link in the standing report document, but if you have trouble finding it, just send me an email and I will send you the application form. And that concludes the PUC update. So at this point, I will answer any questions that anybody may have, if anybody has any.
Thank you, Daryl. This is Scott. Does anybody have questions for Daryl on his report? Daryl, again, this is Scott. I do have one question. As the group knows, we partnered with the Colorado Communications Utility Alliance when we were working on the legislation that was passed a couple of years ago. And the CCUA is interested in having quarterly reports, just as an update on the, where we're at with the 911 status, because they also were very interested in the FCC NPRM around appropriate use of 911 funds. Would there be any concerns if I share the annual report with the CCUA after you've provided it to the state legislature?
This is Daryl. The report the written report that already went to the legislature is public record, so you can certainly share that with anybody you would like to. If that committee would like me to come and give reports to them, I'm open to do that as well. But as the chairperson, and since you're also on that committee, if you want to provide those reports, that's fine as well.
Great, thank you for confirming, Daryl. Appreciate it. All right, no other questions with Daryl. Then we will move on to the BASP report from Lumen.
Hi, this is Tim. Thanks. I do not have anything specific to share today that we don't cover either in some of our other meetings or things that Daryl has covered.
Thank you, Tim. Again, this is Scott. Appreciate that. I do know that we'll be talking about a Lumen item when we get to old business. In the meantime, did the group have any other questions they'd like to ask Tim before we move on? Hearing none, thanks again, Tim. BSP report from Entrado.
Hi, Scott. It's Mary Jane. I don't have anything to report today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jane. And likewise, any questions for the group for Entrado? Great, thank you. Bylaws Committee, Kimberly, any updates for the group?
This is Kimberly, and no updates on the Bylaws Committee. We did not have to meet.
Thank you, Kim. Appreciate it. For the Legislative Committee, Jackie Louise, do you have an update?
Hey, this is Jackie. I don't really have an update. We are still working on misuse of 911 legislation, and all the information has been given to Representative McCluskey, and I'm waiting to hear back from their office.
Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate that. Does the group have any questions for Jackie about the Legislative Committee's work? Great, thank you, Jackie. The next item is for the Equal Access Committee, and I know that during the initial check-in, Cheryl was not here. Has Cheryl since joined us, or is there anybody else that would like to speak on the Equal Access Committee?
This is Holly. Cheryl did send me an email, so I'm just going to find that real quickly. So from Cheryl's report that she's continuing to work with FEMA IPAWS on updating the emergency alert systems for equal accessibility for the whole community. She will be setting up a meeting with them at the COEM conference next month. She mentioned that during the Marshall Fire, there were a lot of people that did not get alerts to evacuate, that they were not aware that they had to opt in to receive these alerts. Cheryl would like to start a campaign to help educate communities on how to opt in to the emergency alert notifications. She welcomes all ideas and strategies. She mentioned that Kyle Clark from Next News is doing a great job on getting the word out about emergency alert notifications. And she wants to start engaging more with the Audio Information Network. And then she provides a couple conference dates, which I will put into the minutes. And that is all.
Thank you, Holly, for providing that update for Cheryl. If I may, for just a second, put Kimberly from LEDA on the spot. I believe LEDA last year did a really good job and presentation on your public outreach. Do you still have that material available, Kimberly, that maybe we could share with the group again?
Yes, I do. I'd be happy to share it.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Equal Access Group? Okay, we'll move on to the Outage Committee. Daryl, to hand it back to you again.
This is Daryl. Can you guys see? I don't know if it's sharing the right screen or not. Let me.
Right now, we can see the standing reports agenda, Daryl.
Okay, let me change which screen I'm sharing. Or we can do it from here. Can you see it now? The outage dashboard is what you should be seeing.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. So the outage dashboard, as always, shows the 10 most recent outages that have been posted. We closed out 2021 with 10 outages. The standing report says 9, but we got one, unfortunately, on New Year's Eve. So that put us at 10 outages. That's still the lowest since 2017. With 9, we would have been matched with 2017, but it's still the lowest number of outages since 2017. It does match the number of outages that we received in 2020. So not necessarily getting better, but not getting worse either, and certainly better than 2018 and 2019, which were our peak years. The next chart, the one on the right there, is outages as of today's date in each year. We're really early in the year yet, so we can see that we have had one where we have not had one yet in 2022, at least one that's not registered as closed and confirmed yet. But we did have one by this point in 2021, 2020, and 2018. This chart will become much more meaningful as the year goes on. Outages per month this year, since the year's just started, that's all at 0. And because we haven't had any yet registered for 2022, you can see that the other charts on this page stop at 2021. Average outage duration by year, I think is something we're going to be wanting to watch. In 2021, it was the highest since 2016, when we started keeping track of that statistic in the charts. So the duration of the outages in 2021 on average was much higher than it has been in previous years, or at least significantly higher than it has been in previous years. And if you hover over it, you can actually see what it was. It was almost 19 hours was the average duration, which is very high. However, the average customer count was very low compared to previous years. And in fact, it's the lowest that it's been since 2017. So smaller or outages affecting smaller numbers of people, which generally could mean rural areas, but for longer durations. And so then when we look at the average outage impact, you can see that the average outage impact was actually very low, despite the impact is, by the way, calculated by the number of customers as reported by CenturyLink that were impacted times the duration of the outage in minutes. So even though we had a high duration average, the low customer count average is what caused that average outage impact to be low. And then we had total user minute impact for the year. And for 2021, it was again very low for the whole year compared to the previous years. Going back to 2017 was the last year where it was actually lower than it was in 2021. So sort of mixed news there regarding how we're closing out 2021 in terms of basic emergency service outages. Outages by cause. I don't have a chart showing what they were specifically in 2021, but you can see what they are from 2016 to current year to date. And we're still almost split, about 40% from system failures, about 30% from accidental cable cuts, and then the other 30% are mixed between these other causes. It used to be almost exactly 33% system failure and 33% accidental cable cuts. So we're seeing a little bit of a move in between those two, but we'll be watching to see if any particular trends emerge. I have added a new map that shows where the location. This is rough location, by the way. I'm not giving away anything that you can't deduce from our chart up here. So there's no security sensitive information on here, but shows rough locations of outages over the course of calendar year 2021. So this kind of matches what I was deducing from the other statistics, and that most of the outages were in rural areas. You can see there were several out on the Eastern Plains. And potentially because they are out in rural areas, they also take longer to fix, and that could explain the high average duration of the basic emergency service outages we had in 2021. The outage committee is still continuing to review specific outages that meet certain criteria, which turns out it's most of the basic emergency service outages we get do meet our criteria, which are, one of the criteria is if the outage is over 4 hours in duration, and you can see, our average duration was fairly high. If it affects multiple public safety answering points, if there is any report of poor communication between Lumen and the public safety answering point during the outage. Those are all triggers for a special investigation. And we currently have, if we go back to the committee's page, the outage committee, we do currently have, you can see what special investigations we're working on. I have 2 already in here. I have another one that I'm preparing that affected Grand Junction alley service. Some dispute over whether that one was a basic emergency service outage or a CPE outage, but because there is a dispute over that, we'll be starting a special investigation. And then this one in the city of Thornton was reported to the commission by the city of Thornton itself, not by Lumen. There's some ambiguity in our rules as to whether it's still an outage, even if the 911 calls are routed to another public safety answering point. But because they do, those types of outages do impact PSAP operations fairly significantly, I went ahead and started a special investigation on that one as well. So if anybody has any questions for me, I'll try to answer those. But if you are interested in joining the outage committee, which reviews these special investigation forms and helps devise or formulate questions for investigation as part of that effort, let me know and I can get you added to that committee.
Thank you, Daryl. This is Scott. Thank you for the update. And I see that Jennifer has her hand up.
Thanks. This is Jennifer. Just to add on a little bit to that alley outage, I don't think I let Daryl know this at the time, but I believe that Garfield County also got notification of that particular outage. Carl, if I'm mistaken in this, speak up, but it didn't occur to me at the time, but it occurs to me now that it could not have been only our CPE failure if it was also affecting Garfield County. Were you affected by that? Or did you get notification of that particular outage?
What day was it? I know we did get one recently that we were having an outage and we got several phone calls.
I'm pretty sure that was Monday.
Yeah, I think that's the same one.
Okay. Thanks. I just wanted to put that in for Daryl's edification since they're going to look into it. Thank you.
So Carl, if you wouldn't mind finding out what impact you had from that and email it to me, that way I can make that part of the documentation.
Okay, yeah, I think it was just the information. We still were getting calls.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer and Carl, both. And Daryl, there was a question posed to the chat. I don't know if you were able to see, from Billy Allen asking what are the common causes of system errors?
So we can go back to the outage page here, which shows. So one of the charts, come on. There we go. One of the charts on this page down near the bottom shows outages by cause 2016 to current year to date. So
Yeah, that's the one.
So over that 5-year period, you can see that 40% of the basic emergency service outages were due to system failures. That's usually a hung up card or a card that needs to be replaced, something in the central office or one of the central offices themselves. Accidental cable cuts make up 30%. And that's usually somebody digging where they shouldn't be, or there was a locate and the locate failed to identify properly where the cable was, so that when there's construction going on, it causes it's actually, it says cable cut, but it's actually a fiber cut in most cases. And then the other 30% of outages you can see are kind of mixed across these other causes. We had one wildlife caused outage in 2021 due to, for some reason, fiber optic cables are very tasty to marmots. At least that's what I've been told. So that was the cause of one of them. 4 of them caused by weather or natural disaster, including one in Georgetown, which was caused by a fire. And this is one that, this unknown cause, I think, is something that to be watching for. We do seem to be getting an increase in the number of unknowns. This is usually caused when there is an outage, but by the time the technician gets to the central office, the system or the card has reset itself. So we don't necessarily have a definitive answer from Lumen as to what caused the outage, but that is something we'll want to watch, because it's difficult to make any sort of trending analysis or plans for how to improve outages if we don't know what's causing them. So that's something we'll be wanting to watch as well. Any other questions?
I'm good.
I do want to remind people too that those statistics only include what are considered basic emergency service outages. They do not include outages in the originating service provider network, and they do not include outages that are strictly due to equipment issues within the public safety answering points themselves, because the commission only regulates that middle portion of the 911 call flow.
This is Scott. Thank you, Daryl, for the report as well as for the walkthrough and data there. Appreciate it. If no other questions, then we will move on to prepaid and collections. Jackie, do you have any update for the group?
This is Jackie. I do not have an update.
Thank you, Jackie. And Daryl, do we have an update for the reports committee?
This is Daryl. The reports committee primarily exists to approve a report from the task force to the commission every other meeting. This is not one of the meetings where a report is due, so I have nothing to present at this meeting. So at the next meeting in March, we will provide a copy or a draft of a report to the task force ahead of the meeting and then ask for a vote, but nothing to report at this meeting.
Great, thank you, Daryl. And Kimberly, how about an update for the ESINet users group?
Thank you, Scott. This is Kimberly. So the migration project is almost done. We learned yesterday there's just 2 PSAPs left, and those are military installations. The Alley hardware project is underway. That is not complete. So Lumen did follow up, and they still have some outstanding PSAPs that need to have the Alley replacement done. They are working on procuring that hardware. So that is where the delay is at. We did complete that project and it went fine. So if you're worried about how it's going to go, I definitely recommend that you get on the bridge with the team and control the testing as much as possible and monitor that conversation. And with all those controls in place, it was a very successful transition. Lumen did provide a brief overview that they are still working on updates for us on our request for an ECATS, GIS, and even text to 911 statewide. So they are working on that. Of course, that is something that would go through a tariff process. So from a cost perspective, what I included in the report is the estimate that Lumen provided us a while ago. This could obviously change. It can change based on more information that they find out through their conversation. It can also change based on how the tariff process unfolds. But it is important, in my opinion, for authorities to take a look at those numbers and start thinking about the cost. If we move forward with a change this year and the tariff gets approved, then this is something that may or may not be reimbursable right now. So we do have a little ceiling in that state 911 surcharge. Obviously, we're collecting more on the prepaid, which is all fantastic. This would be a change on that tariff. So the cost that you're paying monthly for 911. We also have a next generation planning session workshop. It is going to be remote and in person. We'd love to host you here at LIDA. We do have a new facility we moved into in 2020 with a backup hot PSAP. So hot site means everything is live and active. So we're happy to host you, have you take a look at our facility. But for those of you that want to attend remote, that's perfectly fine. We'll have everything set up for you remotely as well. We are providing food, so there's some incentives. For COVID precautions, if you do travel, please know that we do have a mask requirement indoors in Larimer County, and we will do everything to honor social distancing when you arrive. So please make sure you RSVP so we can do a head count and space everything appropriately. And that is the update I have for the EZINet. Does anybody have any questions for me? Great, thank you, Scott. I'll turn it back over to you.
This is Daryl. Can I just add a little bit of information?
No.
By all means, please do.
So just so everyone knows, and first of all, Kimberly, on the GIS, the one-time fee, I think the comma may be misplaced there. Is it 1,800 per SIP session or 18,000?
I have 1,800 per SIP session.
Okay.
It's 1806.67. So I'm missing the period between the 0 and the 6. Thank you for catching that.
Okay. So on the ongoing costs, it may be helpful for people to know that the state 911 surcharge generates about $100 a month per concurrent session per penny. So anytime you increase the cost per concurrent session to the PSAPs in the tariff by $100, that means an increase of 1 penny to the surcharge. So just as a reference, so people have an understanding of what that means in terms of impact on the state 911 surcharge rate. Of course, any increase has to be approved by the commission. So I'm not saying that these would necessarily be covered, but they by statute, they could be covered if the commission approves it.
This is Scott, and thank you, Daryl and Kimberly, both. Any other questions on this topic? Kimberly, and for the whole group, is just an update. I did share the invite for that with my information security officer, and he in turn was very intrigued and also forwarded it to the regional group of information security officers. So we may actually have some good representation for information security at that meeting, just as a heads up for everybody.
And this is Kimberly. That's fantastic. And I would encourage that if you have additional members inside your team that would like to come to the workshop, then please invite them. They can even just tune in remotely. That would be completely fine.
Thank you, Kimberly. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to the GIS committee. Matt, do you have an update for the group? See on the written, no report, but anything that came in, would you like to share?
Sorry, this is Holly. Matt did email me and let me know he didn't have anything additional to add.
Great, thank you, Holly. Moving on to the Colorado Public Safety Broadband update. Ed Mills, do you have an update for the group?
This is Holly. Am I wrong in remembering that Ed is no longer with that department?
Holly, this is Scott. I vaguely remember that as well, but I do see that Ed's on the list of participants.
Ed, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know why I thought you were no longer with that department. Actually, maybe I'm thinking of Glenn.
Looks like
This is
maybe
Jennifer, and Glenn is no longer with that department.
I'm sorry, Jennifer, who was that?
Glenn is no longer with the state.
Thank you for confirming. Appreciate it. Well, why don't we come back? Ed might have had to step away, so we'll circle back to that committee. The PSCS report. Denny, do you have an update for the group?
This is Deanie, and I do not have anything to add.
Great, thank you, Deanie.
Thank you.
And do we have a SWIC update for the group?
Okay, this is Holly. SWIC is where Glenn was previously the representative. And so Glenn is no longer with the state. So I don't know if anybody else from the state is here to report on SWIC.
This is Daryl. Does anybody know if Glenn's replacement has been hired?
This is Deanie. They do not have a replacement at this time.
This is Carl. I think Cam Monty has been filling in some stuff. I thought she was on the call earlier, but I don't see her now.
Okay, thank you. Deanie or Carl, do you think that you guys would be notified if who Glenn's replacement is so that we could reach out to him before the next meeting, or anybody else on the call?
This is Deanie. Yes, I'll keep you updated. They don't have a replacement at this time, but as Carl said, Pam is helping out as she is able to.
Great, thank you, Deanie. So if
You're welcome.
the starts before the next meeting, we can ask it to include that person on the agenda then as well.
I'll let you know.
Thank you, appreciate it. Then the Division of Fire Prevention and Control report. Do we have Monica on the line to give an update? I don't see Monica, but I do see the written report there that she sent in. Holly, did you want to speak to that, or just we can have people read it?
This is Vicki. I could speak to that actually, Scott.
Great, thank you, Vicki. Yes, if you don't mind, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I've been filling in for Monica as kind of her alternate rep on the Fire Commission. They did meet a couple of days ago and basically voted on all the items that were brought forward by the different subcommittees. The one that obviously I was involved in was the first one, the implementing the coordination center to integrate 24/7 capability. Jennifer was also on that group. So anyway, they're moving forward with that, and now they're just determining funding and next steps, but really good process. They were able to do a lot of organization for some of the stuff for statewide initiatives. I think that's the end of my report.
Great, thank you, Vicki. Are there any questions for Vicki on that report? Okay, and then Vicki, if you don't mind, since you're stepping in for Monica, can you give an update on the Resource Center?
Sure. Yeah, so we're basically starting up the ECC roundtable calls again, primarily because they're noticing such a crunch on staffing, the staffing crisis, as well as the coronavirus issues. And we did get information on how to get reimbursed for COVID-19 funds. And then we are also going to be coordinating the legislative visits for 911 Goes to Washington in February. I think that's it.
Great, thank you, Vicki. And I know I've seen numerous emails from Monica about the ECC roundtable meetings, but again, if anybody on the call is not participating and you would like to participate, please reach out to Vicki and Monica and we'll get you set up.
Yep.
So this is Kimberly. I have a question. Vicki, have you heard if they're talking about canceling 911 Goes to Washington due to COVID numbers?
At this time, no. There is not a plan for that. Obviously, you know, on my new hat, We are always keeping a finger on the pulse to kind of see where the things are going, but we actually have our SVP and CIF conference starting next week, and it's still a go. So there are obviously additional things that are going to be in place for the conference itself, and I have heard that there may be some issues with some of the visits on, I believe it was the Senate side, just because of scheduling. So, but no, last I heard, they're still planning on it. Yep.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Vicki and Kim. And any other questions for Vicki? Okay, hearing none, one more time, we'll see if Ed is back. Ed Mills, do you have an update for the public safety broadband?
I am sorry, I must have missed it when I stepped out for a second. Yeah, we are working diligently to find out how the federal funds are going to impact the state of Colorado. We have hired a resource to help us look at all the different nuances. I think at this point, if anyone here in their own departments, municipalities, counties, or even this body, if you have any specific needs, please let us know what they are, so that as we look through federal legislation and we look at how the money is going to be allocated, we'll have your requests and know what you're looking at. Our office is diligently putting together a statewide plan. There are a lot of moving pieces right now, but we're really excited about what this could potentially do for not only the state, but specifically, I am a responder. And for 911, we'd like to see the kind of redundancy and resiliency that we need in the state, and the kind of connectivity. So we have a new executive director for the Colorado Broadband Office will be coming on shortly, perhaps by next meeting, or definitely by March. I'll be able to introduce her to you, and we'll see if she can come on and say a few things about where she's going to take our department. But just know we're here, and we are waiting for you to let us know what you need, and we'll take care of you to the best of our abilities. We do want to serve the 911 community as well as everyone else. So anyway, unless there are any questions for me, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Are there any questions for the group for Ed?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ed. That concludes our standing reports. And Daryl, I know in the agenda we have a break for lunch, but if the group's not opposed, maybe we can try to cover old business and then break for lunch if needed. Would there be any opposition to doing so? Okay, well, hearing none, let's go to the late fees being charged by Lumen. And I know this was brought up last month, and good, Bruce is on the call. So Bruce, do you have an update? Were you able to make any headway working with Lumen on that? And maybe Bruce had to step away.
Scott, this is Kimberly. I can give an update if you would like on this.
That'd be great. Thanks, Kimberly.
Okay, so we had our EZNet call yesterday, and from the EZNet side, the Lumen would like to have anybody with billing issues or billing concerns to reach out to Wes Horn, and he will take the matter and research it and work on getting everything resolved. And that includes perhaps removing late fees or challenging late fees, especially if there are billing issues, meaning they maybe sent the bill to the wrong location or you didn't get it in a timely manner. So that information was given yesterday on our call. Bruce was on that call, so hopefully everything is going where it needs to go to get it resolved. So just from everybody's perspective, if you are having concerns with your EZNet bill, please reach out to Wes Horn, because he loves tackling invoicing every day, but that he will definitely get it resolved for you.
Thank you, Kimberly. That says it all.
Thank you, Kimberly and Wes both. And Wes, just a quick question I have. Again, this is Scott. quick question that I have. I can't remember, I know we talked in the last meeting, the EZNet bills should be available on Control Center if we request them to be, correct?
They are, that is correct. I don't think very many people have gone that route, though. It seems to pop up pretty regular that they want to have that capability, and it's fairly easy to go into that link and make that happen.
And so for the benefit of the group, Wes, if an entity would like to have that access to Control Center and make sure that because I know it's a two-step process. First, they have to get access to it. And then secondly, the billing account number needs to be added to that portal. So do they work directly through you to make those requests?
They can, and I think maybe I'll get the CSM to, we'll get that link out to everybody so that they have it in front of them and can do that themselves. But yeah, in the interim, just email me and I'll take care of it.
Thank you for that, Wes. That'll be very helpful. Does anybody else have questions for Wes or any other discussions on the late fees as a topic as a whole? Okay, great. Thank you all. Appreciate that information. And with that, we have new business. Again, we still have about 9 minutes before lunch, but does anybody from the group have an item to discuss for new business today? Great. Hearing none on that, although a chat just came in. Let me read this. Ed, if you are still on the call, there was a question in the chat from Richard Jacobson around first responders using FirstNet in the state. Does a state office still maintain data regarding FirstNet subscriptions in the state? Ed might have had to step away again. Richard, I would recommend, unless anybody else knows of a different resource, Richard, I'd recommend working with the Colorado Broadband Office because they did have a direct program regarding the FirstNet rollout in the state, and they, I believe, were maintaining data specific to that. But again, if anybody else has any other knowledge on that, please speak up. Okay. Open discussion. Any other items that anybody would like for the good of the group?
Scott, this is Daryl.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I had a couple of things submitted to me right before the meeting or right at the beginning of the meeting. They won't take very much time though, so I don't think we need to do a break for lunch quite yet. The first was whether, I think this has already been talked about by Cheryl in her standing report about emergency notifications during the Marshall Fire. Somebody else asked me if we were going to discuss any emergency notification issues during the Marshall Fire. And I did see one news article about it, but I don't have any concrete information myself. So I wondered if there was somebody on from one of the affected PSAPs that have any additional information they can share with the group or are able to share with the group.
Daryl, this is Patty. I'm on. I don't know that I have anything to share specifically about that. They've been pretty busy and we haven't really met as a group to talk about some of the issues. I was told that 911, just as a side, worked great. There weren't any issues there. And the early information was that most of the people that did not receive alerts had not opted into the system. So there wasn't necessarily a breakdown in Everbridge or the notifications, but that's one of the areas that we'll be talking about as a group. We just haven't had the time to sit down and meet yet.
Patty, do you know if wireless emergency alerts were used at all, or was it strictly emergency notification system Everbridge?
That's the piece I don't know. I saw some indication that it was mostly the emergency notification. as you can imagine, the fire was moving faster than probably any notifications could have gone out, but I haven't been privy to any of the immediate debriefs they did. But anything that comes out of that we can learn from, for sure, we'll share with the group moving forward.
So this is Kimberly, just really quick. My understanding from the Boulder team is that they did not use iPause or the iPause integration with Everbridge.
This is Joe Benkert. Yeah, there was a printed document released by the Sheriff's Department that said that they weren't, with the WEA, that there's limited control over the area that the notices go out to. And they were concerned about if more people got it that needed to evacuate, that the roads would get too crowded and inhibit the ability of people to get out of the area. And I believe I saw news reports that there were problems with some of the roads getting, backed up because of so many people trying to get out. During the PSCS meeting on Thursday, there was a report that some of the cell sites were out in the area, but that was because of the connections to the cell sites burning. The Comcast and Centrelink facilities, not because of damage to the cell sites themselves, which I guess could have affected some of the ENS calls.
Joe, this is Daryl. My understanding is that the cell sites that were out were all in the mountain communities to the west, outside of the evacuation area. So that probably wouldn't have affected it. But I had the same thought about if they send out a wireless emergency alert, it can go to a very wide area. And because the visibility on the roads was terrible because of all of the smoke, if you put a lot of people on those roads that don't need to be there, you can slow down the evacuation. Well, thank you. And Patty, if there is additional information that comes up that Boulder is able to share, I understand that it can be a sensitive topic too. You don't want to put out information about what happened until you know exactly what happened. I think that would be welcome at a future meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the other topic that was brought up to me early on in the meeting today was whether it would be possible to open up the Zoom meeting earlier, maybe like a half hour before the actual meeting starts for future meetings, to give people some socialization time. I don't particularly see any issue with that. Scott, I wanted to run that past you and see if you thought there was an issue with that. And because it's Holly's Zoom account that we're actually using, to see if Holly has any concerns with that approach.
Thanks, Daryl. This is Scott. Since we called the meeting to order at the beginning and start the recording, I would not see any issue with that because it would not be the formal meeting prior to that anyway. So I think that's a good approach, good idea. And then again, Holly, would that be acceptable for you since you have to open the meeting?
This is Holly. I'm sorry, I missed. They're asking if we can join prior to the meeting starting for some like socialization time. Is that what was said? Or after the meeting?
No, before the meeting. They're suggesting that we actually open the Zoom meeting half hour before the formal meeting starts to give people time to do some socialization.
Honestly, I mean, I could. I just have to get in there and start the meeting. So it just depends if I'm in another meeting at that time. Usually I'm probably not. Thursdays, every 2 months at 10 a.m. I'm probably not in another meeting using my Zoom.
Are you able to share with me the sign in just for that purpose? And that way, if you
yeah, I can. Well, if I'm in my own Zoom though.
Oh, right.
If I'm in a meeting, I can't start a second meeting. But if I'm not in a meeting, I don't see any issue with it. That just might be the only time I couldn't do that is if I were already using my Zoom account for another meeting.
Okay. So probably we can.
Yeah, if you're not,
ahead.
this is Scott again. Holly, if you're willing to give it a shot, let's see how it goes. And then if it becomes a burden and if you do end up with conflicts, then we can look at alternative options potentially to give people that opportunity prior to the meeting starting as well.
And this is probably just another consideration is that we just depending on how we schedule interpreters. If somebody who was using an interpreter wanted to be part of that 30-minute congregation time, I would just need to make sure that I schedule the interpreters appropriately.
That's a great consideration, Holly. Thank you.
And Scott, that's all I had for open discussion.
Great. And I see in the chat that Tina posted that perhaps we can offer a Teams link. I mean, I was thinking along the same lines from the city of Aurora, we could either host a Teams link or a WebEx either way. Just not certain if everybody's got that capability, but if it does become onerous, then let's look at that and we can use a different option potentially. Really anybody could host that, but just need to send an invite out as a, a pre-meeting gathering. And then like Holly said, we would want to make sure that we potentially invite the interpreters, at least make them aware. So if anybody needs that service, they have it available during that congregation as well.
And
But
this is
like
Daryl, just as a reminder too, we do have the state's Google Meet account, but that does not work that great, apparently for some of the accessibility participants. So we know that Zoom does work well for those participants. So if we use something else like GoToWebinar or Teams, we'll just need to make sure that that is acceptable for the accessibility participants.
Thank you, Daryl. That's a great point because that was part of the reason why I migrated to Zoom. Let's try it next month, Holly, and then, I'm sorry, next meeting. And again, if we need to, we could look at other options and potentially we can work with the interpreters to find other options we could pursue as well, do some testing to see if Teams or WebEx potentially, because I'm more than happy to set that up as a meeting. We have both accounts available at the city. So if necessary, we can certainly do some testing and make sure that that would work for the interpreters as well.
This is Holly. Since we've switched to remote, we're always finishing these meetings way before 1 o'clock. Would there be consideration to just doing that at the end of the meeting since the Zoom link is already open? We already have the interpreters who are booked till 1 o'clock. People are already on the call. If they want to stay, they can stay. If they want to drop off, they drop off. Is there any opposition to having that socialization congregation time once the meeting's concluded rather than before?
But after the meeting, we're tired.
I am in some groups that do this, and it seems to be just a lot more convenient when it's before, when people are logging on early anyway and that sort of thing, whereas afterwards, people probably have other things on their agenda.
I don't know who's talking.
Joe Benkert, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Well, this is Holly. Yeah, I can open the meeting up early next month. If anybody who is utilizing interpreters thinks that they want to show up earlier for whatever socialization, that sounds weird. It feels like we're taking our dogs to the dog park to socialize with each other. For any congregation previous to the meeting, let me know and I'll make sure that we book the interpreters for 30 minutes prior.
And thank you, Holly, for doing that. We really appreciate it. Okay, any other items, general discussion for the good of the group? All right, well, hearing none, thank you all. Appreciate your attendance and participation, and we'll see you again in March.
Vicky Pickett, are you still on the line?
this is Holly. I think we do need a motion to close the meeting though.
I just remembered that. Yeah, thanks, Holly. But I don't see Vicky in the list anymore, Daryl.
Okay. I'm not sure if the Resource Center Board was planning, because they sometimes have their meetings right after this one. I don't know if they were planning on having it or not. I don't have it on my calendar, so I'm going to say probably not. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail things.
No, not at all. Yeah, I don't see Vicky in the list, Daryl, so I'm assuming, like you said, that probably not.
Okay.
And thanks for the reminder, Holly. I completely forgot about that. So with that, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
This is Carl. I'll make that motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Carl, and may I have a second?
Tina seconds.
And thank you, Tina, for the second. Any opposed, please say so now. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it, and we'll see you again in 2 months. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.